Recording in progress.
To rise and face the flag. Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
I can fix it.
All right, now is the point in the meeting where if someone wants to talk about something that's not on the agenda, this is the time to do so. Karen.
My name is Karen Garriak. I'm here tonight to bring to your attention a pattern of permit non-compliance, misrepresentation, and what appears to be a systemic failure in our town's enforcement and oversight concerning properties owned by Mr. Rodriguez. My attempts to resolve these issues began on March 14th when I formally requested Mr. Brabazon to provide a letter for the upcoming April 11th Act 250 permit amendment meeting. This letter was intended to confirm two critical facts: that the pergola is located on town property and that the kitchen expansion and deck were not built according to plans submitted for those permits. I also explicitly asked him to withhold certificate of compliance until these matters were resolved, especially given Mr. Rodriguez's apparent non-compliance with the Act 250 town permits. Regrettably, the letter Mr. Brabazon provided me does not serve any purpose for Act 250. Furthermore, and most alarmingly, Mr. Brabazon proceeded to issue certificates of compliance for these very permits despite clear evidence that the permitted conditions had not been met. This non-compliance affects both Act 250 regulations and our town's permitting process, and I believe it requires the Select Board's attention. Let me detail the specific unresolved issues, many of which relate to certificate of compliances being issued despite clear violations. The pergola. It was approved. It was unapproved. It's on town property, which Mr. Rodriguez did not inform the town about. Our town rules clearly require a $1 million insurance policy and Select Board approval for such use. Mr. Rodriguez has been using this town property since 2013 without providing his insurance certificate or obtaining Select Board permission, unlike other businesses such as Thai Basil, Christos, and we ourselves, when we used the land in front of the Cold Cow back in 2020, we had to provide you with a certificate of insurance. Moreover, Mr. Rodriguez's own testimony, which was written in the notes for his permit, falsely states that the pergola is on his private land. We asked Mr. Brabazon to review the map Mr. Rodriguez provided to Act 250, which would readily confirm this misrepresentation. This is deeply concerning, especially as we've learned Mr. Rodriguez admitted to Act 250 that he lacks insurance for the shared parking lot. I must therefore assume he also lacks the required insurance for his long-standing unapproved use of town property, exposing the town to significant liability. His permit in 2013, the rear deck and stairs and unpermitted kitchen expansion. For the redone stairs and deck out back, Mr. Rodriguez was explicitly prohibited from increasing the footprint, yet he enlarged both the deck and stairs, which now cut into our easement and right-of-way. Regarding the kitchen expansion, Mr. Rodriguez told Mr. Brabazon it hadn't taken place. This is false. There is a physical structure underneath the deck that represents a kitchen expansion, whether a walk-in cooler or an addition. It was built without an appropriate plan and has never received a permit. Despite these clear violations and unpermitted structure, Mr. Brabazon issued a certificate of compliance for the deck and stairs and failed to address the structure under the deck. Permit 2015-02-06, the vestibule, retaining wall, fence, unfilled condition, and ADA noncompliance. The certificate of compliance was issued April 23rd, despite numerous unfulfilled conditions from the permit itself. Specifically, page 2, bullet 7, the DRB finds that cutting back the existing concrete curb in this vicinity by about 6 inches would restore adequate handicap access. This is yet to be done. Page 3, bullet 12. The DRB finds that clapboards must be installed on the new entryway, including in the wall fields of each side and in the gable end under the roof. Clapboards trimmed and the body of the door must then be painted to match the remainder of the building. This is yet to be done. Page 4, bullet 3, the concrete curbing has yet to be done. Page 4, bullet 5, the basement entry structure shall be sided with the clapboards. That wasn't done. Page 5, bullet 12, it is the applicant's responsibility to comply with all applicable requirements of ADA. This is yet to be done. His wastewater permit. This permit allows for 22 indoor, 10 outdoor seats. However, per our deeds and easements, Mr. Rodriguez has a maximum of 12 parking spaces with 3 permanent apartment cars. This leaves only 12 spaces for the restaurant per ADA requirement. He has to have 1 AD compliant parking space, which is needed out of the 12. This significantly reduces available parking for Nong's Kitchen, potentially limiting them to 5 usable spaces because every day they have 3 employee cars in that parking lot. So if you take the 5, you multiply it by the 2.5 that they're allowed, they should only be allowed 13 chairs in that establishment inside and out. A certificate of compliance should not have been issued last August for Nong's opening. Mr. Brabazon was aware of Mr. Rodriguez was shut down by fire and safety, that the restaurant needed to be redone, and of our ongoing shared parking agreement. Mr. Rodriguez was told by Act 250 in May 2023 to provide a permit amendment by August 2023, which wasn't completed until February of 2025. This should have all been rectified before that restaurant was open. Adding to this complex issue, the town rules clearly state that shared parking arrangements are to be reviewed every 10 years, or if ownership changes. This parking lot being shared should have undergone such a review, especially given the significant changes that have occurred in property ownership. The uses within the building, now a restaurant with apartment, and the number of permanent vehicles in the lot, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can see the Volkswagen with 3 flat tires that sits there. My fundamental question is, how is a restaurant permitted to open when these significant changes had occurred in the shared parking agreement, which should have been reviewed? It clearly impacted the new uses and the cars in the lot. This crucial step appears to have been overlooked. Directly impacting the effective parking availability and overall compliance. When I asked the zoning office if I could appeal these certificates of compliance that were just issued, mind you, we're going back to 2013 and not one of his permits was a certificate of compliance ever issued. I was told by Scott Murphy that they cannot be appealed. This leaves me without administrative recourse. Therefore, I am asking the select board for two specific actions. I need a detailed letter from the town, which I can provide to Act 250, outlining all of these unresolved issues to date. So I can submit it to the Act 250 permit amendment, which is being discussed right now. A clear and thorough explanation from the town on how an individual is able to obtain multiple certificates of compliance when their construction is non-compliant with the permits, encroaches on town property, easements, involves false statements regarding the scope of the work, and fails to meet critical ADA requirements. These are not minor discrepancies. They represent serious violations that impact town property, private easements, public safety, and the integrity of our permitting and enforcement process. I urge the select board to take these matters seriously and ensure proper enforcement and accountability. Can I please get a letter that I can provide to Act 250?
Is that consideration by Act 250 still ongoing?
Yes.
And it started April 11th. Is that the same here, the same?
Oh, it's the same hearing.
Okay.
It's paused right now. We will get the review and then I have to respond. So he lied. I would be, Mr. Brabazon just, I understand that the permits were a long time ago, but they affect our parking lot. I don't care. It just needs to get resolved correctly.
I know you've had multiple discussions with the zoning administrator and you've had multiple discussions with the town manager. And I believe, Scott, you have taken the point on this.
Right.
So that at least we have one source with which to have this conversation go back and forth without splintering it off. I know you've had an opportunity to look at all this. Do you feel that the town should submit a letter representing the
Well, I'm not going to address all of her comments tonight. A lot of them have been answered in the past. A lot of this is neighbor against neighbor type of thing. But the certificate of compliance, they were issued for permits that had been issued many years before. And that's the part that is unappealable at this point. So when she asks specific questions, I usually send, one email response.
Mr. Murphy refers to it as a dispute between neighbors. It isn't a dispute between neighbors. It's a failure on the town's part to follow its own zoning rules and regulations. I'd rather not deal with Mr. Murphy because he just thinks it's petty and that these issues aren't real. When I went to ask, Mr. Rodriguez is only allowed to use 12 parking spaces. I wanted to put up a barricade to prevent them from using more than 12 parking spaces. So I applied for an Act 250 permit amendment. And in that, Mr. Murphy just said it's a dispute between neighbors. It's the town's failure. It's the town's failure on every level with all of these permits and not following its own zoning rules.
I think that we need to take each one of those comments you made point by point and run them through the process here, not this evening, and try to figure out which ones have legal merit. Because these are pretty strong allegations that the town has been negligent, yeah, basically. So we need to look at each one of those points, look at the town's response. And I've done that on a few of them. And it's definitely confused by the fact that the permits were issued years ago and there seemed to be an ongoing.
And I understand that. I'm not asking you to change his permits. I'm just asking you to provide me with a letter that says like an error occurred. You know, there's a structure under his deck. And that's not even, that was part of one of the permits. And Ron is saying that he never did his kitchen expansion. Well, there's a structure under the deck.
And we look at the conditions of the permit.
Which permit? I mean, this permit's going back 20 years almost.
This one's 2015, 040. It's not that long ago. You know, when I started coming to you guys, you were,
2015 wasn't that long ago.
it's not my fault that all of your zoning administrators don't follow the rules. You know, you had, originally he was permitted for a metal pergola that was supposed to be removed with the season, because at the time you allowed people to do outdoor dining if they could convince their neighbor that they could share their parking. He never got permission from us or the prior owners of the property. So he never should have gotten 10 seats outside because he didn't have appropriate parking. Then that was with Lee Crone. Lee Crone left, Janet Hurley showed up. When Janet Hurley got here, Janet Hurley didn't read the original permit, how the metal pergola was supposed to be removed with the season. Same with the chairs. Those chairs have sat outside year round and they're not supposed to. On town property, and you guys don't even get your $1 million insurance, liability insurance from him.
Yeah, I'm not sure on the $1 million liability insurance for.
What did Ty Basil and Christos come here for? For using the sidewalk, they had to provide you with insurance and they needed to get town's approval from the select board. He's using town property. People are eating and drinking out there. It's the same thing.
I don't know, the sidewalk's here and then,
It's the town right of way she's referring to. It's not the town sidewalk.
okay.
They're not on this, they're in the town property.
You own the properties on either side of the.
Correct. There's only 29 parking spaces and that building never should have gotten permitted to be a restaurant.
It was permitted it was Ponce before its current restaurant, right?
It was originally, so this is how sneaky Mr. Rodriguez is. He originally had it as a retail, then he switched it over to do ice cream. He did 10 chairs. You go back in the file, he got violation after violation after violation. He got civil fines and had to go to court because he had too many chairs. And every time that you guys found that he had too many chairs, he had to increase his permit. And then you didn't look at the parking spaces. You just kept giving him more and more. He's only entitled to 22 indoor seats. I've asked that you guys go down and count the chairs because in the past, Lee Crone would go and count chairs and give violations. Mr. Brabazon calls them and says, hey, I'm coming down. Get rid of the chairs.
I'm not comfortable with making that kind of accusation here. No, I'm not.
Well, that's what's going on.
Karen, I don't want to hear that kind of accusation in this forum because it sounds to me as though this is also in a litigative state. And I would think that from my point of view, the points that you made should be being brought from your attorney and not to the select board. I'm not sure if you agree, Mr. Chairman, but when you start making accusations like that against town employees, it's very uncomfortable for me. Okay, so I'd either tone it down and stick to the facts.
Those are the facts.
Okay. But I don't want to hear that. And yeah, personally, I don't know, Mr. Chairman, and Scott, you may have some insight on this, but this sounds litigious, not something that the select board, based on your accusations, can address. And
Here's, I mean, you and I have talked about this, Karen, that the select board has very little statutory authority to delve into zoning matters. That's, I mean, the DRB grants permits, the zoning administrator has statutory authority independent of the select board. Yes, if that individual is appointed by the select board, yes, it's a town employee. But we cannot influence politically any decision that's against the law. They're supposed to do it themselves. So these allegations are fairly serious, and we would have to look at it from the standpoint of whether the zoning administrator is doing the statutory duty that they should be, but we can't interfere in that process. We are charged with appointing that individual, but there's and we're not even anywhere near this point. There's a completely different process for unappointing a zoning administrator. So the state separates these things for a valid reason so that politics doesn't get into land use development. So the letter that you're looking for should come from the zoning administrator. And I'm not sure if we have the statutory authority to go beyond that, to intervene in the process without getting some kind of legal opinion on it.
Yeah, we've sent her what we can send her.
Okay.
She's looking for additional
No, I'm not.
information to strengthen her argument in the Act 250 court.
No, all I was looking for was a letter that the pergola is on town property and that the deck and stairs weren't built how they were supposed to be built and that there is a structure under the deck. That's it. That's
And you've never sent me anything with just two questions on it.
at the end of Mr. Brabazon's March 14 letter. That's what was stated. And when I went to your house, that's what I asked for.
There were 5 or 6 bullet points on the
There were-
paper that you handed me, but
Correct. But at the bottom, it said, I only need these 2 bullet points to help my case.
Well, Ivan, if we can supply what she's asking for, we'll do it. And if we can't, then we won't.
yeah.
We'll take a look at that tomorrow.
All right. So probably move on. If you heard what Scott said,
I heard what he said.
if we can, we'll supply it. Any other public comments? This is sometimes the best part of the meeting. This is anything that's not on the agenda. Yeah.
That's gonna be hard to follow.
Do your best.
So my name is Travis Mears. I'm the general manager of the Palmer House. We've been working, trying to get our restaurant open to the public. Last year, we got permission, we got the okay from planning and zoning to move forward. And now it said it had to come back to you guys, and we haven't heard anything since. So I don't know, is there some steps that we have to take to get the final approval to open this up to the community, or
Okay.
what are my next steps?
What the planning commission approved at that point in time was a change in the zoning bylaw.
Okay.
Which included a map. And going back in my memory,
Yeah,
my memory banks now, that did not get approval at this level?
I think it did. I think although I don't feel like it was completed.
Yeah.
So
Something that there was
maybe they were asking for
had something
additional
in
information.
that.
Oh, right. That's right. They were looking for a change in the zoning map.
Is that
Oh, that
included
was,
the
that was
bookstore,
carving out a section.
And there was,
I don't believe we did that.
included
yeah, there
behind.
was
Yield
fairly
signs.
strong,
Spot zone.
fairly strong statement made in our public hearing that that was that made a very strong case that was spot zoning and inconsistent with what was done in other areas. And I believe we may have scaled that back, that we approved most of that, but didn't approve the change to the zoning. Now, I'd have to go back.
I'll have to pull that tomorrow. and
Yeah,
find
but
out.
but that's a good question. But regardless, whether it got past this level or not, we'll find that, we'll find out because I don't.
Thank you.
If it did, what that accomplishes is it changes the zone that you're in and makes your intended use or permitted use, but it doesn't give you a permit.
So we have the food and lodging permit state licensed already because we are a hotel.
But that's the state license, but I believe it would require a local zoning permit, which would be granted by the Development Review Board.
I believe they did that, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, if they did, then that would have been based on the fact that the zoning had changed because it wasn't allowed prior to that. We're gonna have to look at this.
So, yeah.
I totally get that. This would be a good starting point.
We just granted you a liquor license, right?
Yes, we just renewed our liquor license.
We did that. I'm wondering what that, is that just on the sidewalk?
Yeah, and well, that's it. It's like we have all the permits for everything else,
I need to refresh it.
Remember, right?
We'll pull this tomorrow and see where we're at. I'll get back to you. See if we
that would be fantastic. I would really appreciate it.
Okay.
All right.
Good.
Hey, gentlemen.
Hey, you did all right. That was a good follow.
little easier, right?
What else have we got? Public comments,
One side to the other.
going once, going twice. Okay, no more public comments. Item number 4 is approval of the minutes from the select board meeting of May 6th.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from May 6th. Second.
You have a second, one side or the other. You got it, Katie? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Liquor license renewals. Looks like we have.
We've got 3. S&D Business Services LLC doing business as Above All Vermont Foods and Goods. Second class license at 210 Depot Street. 2 Ripe Tomatoes Limited doing business as Al Ducci's, second class, and 133 Elm Street. And then MJ Innkeeping LLC doing business as the Inn at Ormsby Hill, first class and outside consumption at 1842 Main.
These are all renewals and there's no issue. There's not in there.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to approve the liquor license renewals stated in section A.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That's carried 5-0. Agenda item number 6. The
Local emergency management plan, we have to renew this annually and update our emergency contact information. It's basically the town's guidebook for emergency responses. The plan identifies points of contact and allows all emergency services to coordinate their responses during an emergency. So we have to send this back into the state and to, and Ivan, I need you to sign it when we do it. Basically, it's an update of phone numbers, addresses, and changes in people.
no substantive changes.
No,
Plans.
no, just contact.
Entertain a motion.
I'd love to make that motion for you, Mr. Chairman.
Try to make it entertaining.
That's always my intent. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the select board readopt the local emergency management plan as stated in section A, the agenda.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. That passes unanimously.
That wasn't as jocular as I could have made it. Do you want to try again?
No.
Okay.
or chamber.
And do you
Got one place to sign on this, Scott?
This one. Thank you.
All right. Agenda item 7 is the select board to authorize the town's letter of intent to apply for a fiscal year 2026 municipal roads grant and aid program. Something we do every year.
We do. Jeff Williams works with Jim Henderson at BCRC. They'll find a project that's worthy. Basically, it's like, culverts or.
Yeah. Do you think we're in the queue for this year?
For this funding, yes, yes. The other big funding we just heard from today was the Class 2 roadway grants, and we kind of took a shot in the dark and we didn't get it.
Yeah.
It's the paved river road, but the idea being they want as many applications so they can justify to the legislature that they've got all this demand. But in this case, they'll put together a project later in the season. We just have to get this in before Thursday, letter of intent.
You need a motion on it?
Yes.
Move to approve the authorization for the town to apply for fiscal year 2026 municipal roads grant.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? 5-0. Oh, you bet. Okay, now the reason everyone is here, Bonnet Street traffic discussion. Scott.
So you've got in your packets some information from the reader. The reader that is displayed on the telephone pole. And I will say that where it says incoming, that's actually what you would think of as outgoing, going away from downtown. And the incoming, outgoing is actually the incoming toward downtown. And then in front of you, we got some more information, which kind of just confirms and affirms previous information. That's from the pole that's about 3 telephone poles further down, near Two Cow Lane. And so that basically shows the similar statistics. And then you have Lynn's maps that she put together previously. And basically what we're seeing is, going both ways. The average speed is near the speed limit. Does pick up a little bit going out of town north by the second pole, about 26.25 miles per hour. But again, that's the average, and that's not exceedingly above the speed limit. The graphs do show like the high spikes. Like a maximum speed. And when questioned that, there was like one vehicle that did like something 68 or something there. He says it could be just an independent person driving crazy, or it could be actually a police response zooming out of it too. But we don't know exactly because we don't have timing or anything like that. So that's really the data that I have for you. You can talk with Lynn.
This is based on
Yes.
169,000 vehicle, 169,272 incoming being going north, and 193,950 coming toward town.
So the traffic volume count, Greg, on the one that you have in your packets, which is from the display unit, was for about 13 days in February. But the second one, which is in front of you, hard copy, that was run from February 28th to May 20th. So a considerable more amount of time and showing a lot larger volume, but again, coming in at roughly the same speed.
Yeah,
Almost a full quarter.
Right, yeah.
so a huge cluster between 20 and 30 miles an hour on these graphs. I don't know if everybody can see that. But this is between 20 and 30, and you've got your darkest area.
Does also seem to be a gradual increase in vehicles per hour over the past 3 months. You can see we didn't really hit over 150 per hour until April, and then it's continuing to, and that's traffic going out of town.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um,
And, you know, as you know, summertime, it's gonna pick up even more.
percent.
And there are a good amount between 30 and 40 miles an hour too, but it's nothing like the most of.
Well, the average looks. This is vehicles per hour, let's say in 5. So like 150 incoming per hour. Last month, this like yesterday. 150 an hour in like going out of town towards the rec center. And then less than that coming in, maybe like 125 average.
So per day, in February bills, 1,800 outgoing and 2,200 incoming.
What's your peak hour? How's that compared to say 6 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock?
Isn't broken.
I don't have it broken down by time.
It's before school and after school.
So our machine.
Right.
The machine.
Craig, can I have you just move, there's a microphone on the podium for the people that are on Zoom, so they can hear what you're saying, 'cause
the machines that you have set up on the poles, the 26 miles an hour average, that's an average of all of these cars?
Right.
That's how it works? Okay.
Can you just restate where the machine is? Is it the one that's down by 2 Cal Lane?
There's two machines.
Okay.
The visible one that says your speed is 25 miles per hour or whatever, that records both ways. And then about 3 or 4 telephone poles down by 2 Cal Lane on the left side going out, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It is another recording device that records both ways. It does not have a display.
going out happens to be incoming.
Right.
Correct. That's right. There's some of this on the table there, believe if anybody wants to pick it up.
Oh, okay. That would be great. So one thing I want to bring up, and I think my neighbors might have the same observation, is the ability to see the cars. If you're in one of the driveways, if you're coming out of Charlie's, or my property is across the street and down from Charlie's, you're coming out of the bank, you're coming out of the some of the other properties, you can't see the cars coming if there's cars parked in their parking spots. And so I think it's just a matter of time before there's a big accident. And I don't know what the solution to that is.
What's the accident?
There was an accident, yeah, I happen to not be there for that, but I think an accident is imminent. And I know I pull out of my driveway several times a day, and if there happens to be a big car parked in the end of my driveway, I have to be able to look through all of the windows of the car to be able to see a car coming north on Route 30. And I think it's dangerous.
I think that, I agree with you, it is dangerous, and I've pulled out of various places there and noticed the same thing. but I've also noticed it anywhere where we have on-street parking, parallel parking, where there's side streets coming out, where it's all on the same level. And, other than eliminating parking spaces, I don't know what else could be done. And one of the biggest issues, downtown right now is the fact that people are telling us we don't have enough parking spaces. So it's trying to balance the two. I do understand that safety comes first. And apparently there was an accident there.
Mhm. I think there were 3 cars involved. One was a parked car.
I'm looking at the map from above and it looks like, and I'm sure this is a state requirement, that there's triangles that are painted in exiting all the commercial buildings so that it gives a buffer where nobody can park so that you can pull out. And that's probably something that the state has determined as an appropriate amount. And then there's no parking next to or in front of TD Bank. That's all hash marked. There's one spot in front of the medical center and then hash marks going towards the small roundabout. Coming out of Charlie's, you've got 2 angled triangles that, eliminate people from parking too close to the entrance or exit. So I imagine that that's probably, I don't know, but Scott, do you know whether that's all, those buffers are state mandated
Where along the.
going in and out of like Charlie's, for example?
Driveway.
Yeah, there's,
Each one of those.
Oh, I mean, we could conceivably block off that parking. But if you block it off, then like delivery trucks will take advantage of that. Like the bank has complained about their space that's blocked off because delivery trucks are blocking their entrance in and out of the drive-through.
And delivery trucks, yeah, it's always gonna be an issue. I mean, they get it, they come, they deliver, they get out. I mean, they're pretty quick, but there's no, every business can't have an accommodation on the street for deliveries because it's, first of all, it's so intermittent. And secondly, it would tie up all the parking if it was only allowed for delivery trucks. So I do understand. I mean, a lot of times the delivery trucks double park, block the traveled way. It happens here, it happens in every town, everywhere. And it's just one of the prices we pay for a busy downtown.
Bill, to answer your question, the data that we have that's from the one more lengthy study that has stuff dating back to the 28th of February through May 20th doesn't have a breakdown by hour, but your question was like, what's the difference between like 6 o'clock? So the data that we have back on the one that has the speed sign, is up for what, a week or so. I can say that there were definitely some per hour spikes. It looks like if I can, based on blocking this out, it looks like the biggest spikes in traffic per hour is around 11 o'clock in the morning. And the outgoing traffic, which kind of makes sense, it seems to be around 3, 4 o'clock, which is when school's letting.
When Charlie closes.
But, there are definitely some days, I find this interesting. I don't remember what happened on this particular day, but this was the 26th of February, if we can all remember what happened then. At about 11, 12 o'clock, there was a really high spike of close to 170 cars per hour.
Well, that was exactly 8 days after my birthday.
Well, there you go. I mean, we were all celebrating.
School gets out at noon.
I just have a question about that. What is the count per hour, the average count?
Oh, 150, right? The 160?
Per hour, I only broke it down by day.
It's roughly.
Roughly.
The median is like, the peak is one.
Is that for the average over 24 hours?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So,
there's times when there's.
yeah, so I'm saying, you get your peak hours during the day could be twice of that.
Well, no, it's actually, it never peaks above 150. Based on this that I have right here, the highest per hour was that one time I was mentioning on the 26th at around 11 or 12 o'clock, when it peaked at about 170. But for the rest of the time, it's around 100, and then it falls off deeply, 100 per hour.
Well, that's, okay, so then I'm a little confused when we say the average hourly.
Average amount of cars at 11 o'clock on this one day was around 170.
Okay,
The times around that, you know, so say a 12 comes in right at 100. 1 o'clock is probably at 90. We're right around 100. And then once it gets to about 6 or 7 o'clock is when you see a steep decline in that traffic.
but that's a lot different than saying our average hourly traffic each and every day is 160 an hour. So that's what I'm a little confused by that.
Well, yeah, because you're getting,
Every hour, the way I interpret the average hourly traffic count is 160. So it's 160 at 6 in the morning, it's 160, that's your average.
no, I mean, keep in mind, Bill,
Your
number,
I hear what you're saying. It's completely different than, I think the number that was.
also the number, Bill, that he was quoting was based on the lengthier study. I'm looking at the hourly study where I can give you more precise back in February.
And that's good. I see that as being less traffic than figuring every hour is 160 an hour on average.
24 hours. Right, yeah.
Is the way I was hearing it before. That's why I went to that.
Before, I'm Lynn Averill. I live on Bonnet Street. Before I start my spiel, I just wanted to say that the average speed that you quote is so not true. You can come sit on my porch and you can find that out in a day. That is seriously. And it doesn't distinguish between trucks, motorcycles, vehicles of all sizes and all shapes. It doesn't square. And I've been at this for a while. I can almost tell you what the speed is of each car. And then I look down the road and see if it's registering on that machine. So I don't understand that, and I think that really needs to be corrected.
And these things are fairly well calibrated. We have to go with the technology that we have available to us. I can't look at a car and tell you how fast it's going.
I can.
Well, your skills are way better than mine.
I watched.
I tell,
Sorry, the only thing that I would say, and maybe I'm looking at this one as compared to this, that the averages are including what appears to be steep drops, like that, you know, you would imagine that if we were tracking cars, right? We would see everything in this. This is almost saying that there are some times when there's an average speed of 0.
yeah.
Does that mean that there were no vehicles at that?
I don't know what those drops are.
So, you know, the question is, should this be like, you know, to get rid of the top or get rid of the top, get rid of the bottom, yeah. So during our highest commute times, what is the average? That's the only thing I could think of that could potentially, I mean, even if you looked at this from just drew a line right through the highest, it doesn't mean that there aren't cars that might be going higher, and it doesn't mean that there aren't cars that are going lower, but if you follow just the highest grouping of colorings, it does tend to strike right about 25 or 26.
Yeah.
The question is whether or not these downward averages are skewing the number in general lower.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Because it could be, and I think I experienced this when I saw someone running on West Road and I saw, it felt like a scene out of Forrest Gump, but they were running towards the sign and it picked them up. at
Yeah.
50 miles per hour.
My grandkids.
Right, you told us that, yeah.
Just quickly for the people that are here, I could hit between 9 and 10 miles an hour, but I could trigger it. It would start at 8 or 9, I think. My grandkids could get up into that 11, 12 mile an hour range. They were quite young. And one of the younger twins was running down through and he's looking at the sign and he's at 9. All of a sudden it bumps up to 26. He goes, 26, there was a car coming behind him. But you can trigger them by running, even small children.
So I just be curious if just some analysis of how other municipalities look at this data comparatively and how they equate for these averages that are significantly lower. And maybe it's right. Maybe we look at a way if we can pull, I mean, the data's there, right? Hopefully it's still there. We can say, okay, give me the hours between 7 and 7.
I'd like to see if we could eliminate the average speed below 10 miles per hour.
Or that, yeah.
You know, so
That's interesting.
if you have someone going 8, you got someone
So
going
many of
48.
these lines that drop all the way to 0. I mean, when you look closer to the median, there's a lot of vehicles below the thick line.
Yeah,
But then there's all these other ones that they go all the way to the bottom, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
yeah. So it needs, I think it needs some, I mean, as a data person, I would love to.
I mean, the ones above the line, the
Right,
median, they're pretty easy to pick out as being individual.
absolutely.
Well, if we had a way to eliminate 10 miles per hour, below 10 miles per hour and get an average above that, that might verify or validate Lynn's comment.
Yeah.
It's not the picture I see on a daily basis, honestly. There is major fast traffic.
There are a lot of cars still going over 40.
We don't,
It's not
I
zero.
believe that this is an issue.
it is an issue and
And
trucks,
and I believe that people that are coming.
major issue.
Are telling us what they are seeing. And I will go so far as to say, I think you're probably right, that, I mean, this would tell me that you are seeing a lot of vehicles above that median number. I mean, I'm not gonna count them, but there's a lot of vehicles that are up in that 40,
Well, if the trucks,
upper 30s, mid to upper 30s.
And Lynn, just to be clear, obviously, as we're saying, these numbers on these average speeds, it's non-discriminatory, whether it's a person, a bike,
Yeah.
a tandem tractor trailer truck. So,
so why don't I read what I wrote with that in mind? And somehow we have to distinguish between trucks, cars, bicycles who don't dare go on that strip.
can I just say one more thing? Sorry, my husband actually just texted me because he mentioned that when you pull out of School Street, the placement of the one that was reading, I don't know if this was this one or, no, this wouldn't have been this one, but he said you can see that it's reading as you're pulling out 10 to 15 miles an hour. That's the number that it catches, right?
Slow.
So it's getting the vehicles that are coming on, turning on to 7.
So this is
or
picking
30.
up acceleration and deceleration. It's not giving you the number as that vehicle passes that reader.
Well, and potentially it could be being disturbed by,
People that are pulling out of School Street. Yeah.
Is the point to prove that the 30 or 25 miles an hour is to be protected by this grant, or should we talk about lowering speed to protect safety of people and car accidents, and just the fact that that beautiful little section of town was such a wider spot several years
And
ago.
there.
And now it's got all this incoming traffic and
Yeah, the problem is nobody that's on Zoom can hear what you're saying because the microphone's not picking you up.
I'm standing here. Okay, I'm gonna read. So I live on Bonnet Street next to the Battenkill Bike Shop. Bonnet Street is experiencing a measurable increase in traffic, mainly commercial, which has resulted in noise from trucks, speeds and over the speed limit, and dangerous situations, resulting in an untenable situation in this densely populated small neighborhood. I believe this is the direct result of growth in our town, and it is not unique to other towns in Vermont as well. There needs to be a compromise between peaceful living and noisy speeding traffic. We are here tonight to understand the issues and find a solution. I will present the current situation. Bonnet Street is a straight stretch of road that runs from the Barnstead Inn to the traffic circle at the North Shire. So straight leads to increased speed. Whoop, I can go straight. And they do. The distance is exactly a half a mile long. A very small, short space. The speed limit is 25. Traffic from 1130 headed south come off of Route 1130, where the speed limit is 40. And the 25 sign is just as you go into Bonnet Street. So you have to be going quite fast. Bonnet Street is straight to the circle. Going from south to north, trucks and cars begin to change gears and gain speed. Changing gears on trucks is unbelievably noisy. This is a densely populated neighborhood comprised of 44 homes, 31 businesses, through which a tremendous amount of local and commercial traffic passes daily, north to south, creating a virtual raceway. And for vehicles large and small speeding over the speed limit, residents find this undesirable and dangerous. The speed, noise, and safety are major concerns. I've said this before, my UPS man laughs at me and he says, well, you know, Lynn, it's the Indianapolis 500. Why should our half a mile of neighborhood be called the Indianapolis 500? The majority of the problems come from trucks, large and small, from tankers to food delivery vehicles, to construction trucks, to logging trucks, to local workman trucks, to landscaping trucks, hauling, their equipment. They are loud, noisy, and fast. Some have Jake brakes or compression brakes. And downshift and upshift as they move fast. It's a terrible noise. It sounds like an airplane landing. Motorcycles are always speeding and revving up their motors. They never do the speed limit. There is no regard for residents who live on Bonnet Street. So I have suggestions, and I've put down things that we should consider, even though they may not be practical. But in trying to find a solution, maybe there's one that would pop up. Reduce the speed to 20 miles an hour. If we do anything with speed, we need enforcement. That's a large issue to resolve. Place stand-up markers down the center of Bonnet Street. Do you know what I mean? The ones that stand this high? Maybe 5 of them. Begin the lower speed signs before the Catholic Church, or even before the rec area. There must have been 500 cars at the rec area, honestly. And that blank for caution. Same with the south-north signage as traffic comes off the circle and turns right at Church Street. And that, I'm just going to stop right there for a second. That is a very dangerous spot. And I do propose that they take away from Charlie's entrance and exit one parking spot on each side. I've heard people, complain about that. You have to pull so far out. And people are trying to come to a stop, or they're trying to rev up. And it's very dangerous. And within 2 or 3 more spots, you're at a walkway. Something's going to happen. Place speed bumps along Bonnet Street. My family and friends said, if you bring that up, you might as well be crazy. But in fact, that's the one thing that will guarantee reducing the speed. What can I say? Could reroute the trucks over Morse Hill Road? I don't know. But if you can think of a way to reroute the truck. The problems on Bonnet Street need much more than a Band-Aid solution. These are serious problems that need to be corrected. So that's my spiel.
So, there's a lot of information there. On your last point about rerouting trucks, the trouble with using smaller class 2 and class 3 roads for truck travel is they're not built to handle the load. And you will notice at the beginning of all of those roads, they have a limit on the size of the truck that can drive on them unless they have a delivery on that road. And we have it on Beach Street, Barnumville Road, High Meadow Way, everything on that side. I believe, I suspect that Morris Hill has weight restrictions on it also.
We know that for sure.
No, I suspect. I don't know for sure.
Can we find out?
Well, it's in Dorset, so I have no purview or control over that. That's
And you got grade issues on Morse Hill. right?
Morris Hill has some serious grade issues.
That's on the chart.
Okay, so that goes out.
But the other thing, listing, as I listened to your list of concerns at the last meeting, our last meeting, we heard the same list of concerns on Route 7A North. A lot of it centered around speeding, but a lot of it centered around Jake brakes and
Noise.
and noise. Any of the major entrances to town. We don't deal with it quite so much on the south end of town because the village deals with it on the south end of the village. And it's the same issues down there.
The police in the towns.
But, and it's not dissimilar from what Dorset deals with coming into the village and it's certainly very similar to what Chester deals with coming into Chester and.
But all the houses here on Bonnet Street, like my house, is 8 yards from the road. And most of the houses line up, particularly on my side of Bonnet Street. So you're talking about basically a small neighborhood village.
I think
It's too close.
I'm not arguing with you, and I think we are interested in getting some expert help on traffic calming measures that actually work. The trouble with just posting a speed limit is, and we've dealt with it
Ridiculous.
forever, people will drive the speed that they're comfortable driving. And especially Route 7A North.
Well, the world is driving fast. Yeah.
But they deal with the same problems you do. And this is also a very straight, flat section of the road. So without putting in some sort of physical traffic calming measures, which you listed a few, we may never be able to fully address a lower than comfortable speed limit for the average driver. It is very hard to get people to drive.
I wonder why, when you do go over to Chester, everybody does go 25 miles an hour because you think you're going to get pulled over. And I think one of the issues here is if we actually.
Well, the same is true in Dorset with that very, very long stretch of 30 miles an hour.
Well, and there has been some enforcement, which causes people to slow down. And I still go the speed limit through Danby, expecting Officer Tiff to appear at any moment, and Officer Tiff has been long gone. But you do go the speed limit through there, and it's and it seems to me that there's a couple of things. One, there is a sign before Stony Fields that says 25 miles an hour ahead.
Right.
But we could, when we have done this, Scott, I think we've done better signage in the past, and Lori brought up one that says residential area, do not use Jake brakes, which I think we might be able to add to and do two things. One, I think we should try better signage, and we should do some enforcement. And I think that if we have a sustained enforcement period.
What does that actually mean?
What does what mean?
Sustained enforcement.
Well, you see over a certain period of time, and I don't know how long that is, where people for years to come will go the speed limit because they're afraid of being pulled over. So I personally advocated for putting a cruiser out there with nobody in it. And that usually does the trick.
We don't have the spare.
We got rid of all of our spare cruisers. But I think the two things that we probably could do is enforcement and signage.
The term is visual narrowing, right? How we are successful in making people drive slower, it's proven, is that visual narrowing, making it feel like it's a smaller space, therefore they drive slower. I will debate one issue, which is that Manchester really has not grown. In fact, we've lost 8% of our population over the past 5 years, right? So with that into account, this is that stretch of Bonnet Street has maintained its qualities. I'm 42. I don't ever remember it looking any different. What may be happening is, the makeup of the folks who are living in that area are noticing these things more. It may younger, 20, 30 years ago, it may not have thought about it. Not saying it's an older generation or anything that may be leading to it. I do think that visual narrowing, yes, lowering the speed limit out here was a quick solution to try to get people to slow down as they're coming into this area before we look at something much larger. There are still issues. There's still people driving too fast. There's still people coming up too fast. For Bonnet Street, I think visual narrowing, you gave a perfect example, actually, is the cones on the lines, right? Almost like you could drive over them if you wanted to. They're like 3 feet high. Right. And they attach to the ground, and you see them sometimes in the highway on Route 2 going to Boston, right? Yeah. That's where I remember them. But that creates a smaller visual space and makes people drive.
Well, what you're saying is effective, and it's what we did on Depot Street.
Right.
So this is what I was thinking of.
Okay. Yeah, that's exactly what.
And you
sort of, yes, but yeah.
Whatever.
The thin poles.
Yeah, I'm talking, this is almost like a thin, it's like a tube that has just a reflector on the top. And it was used, sometimes if they don't want you to pass, or I know there's this stretch on Route 2 in like in Irving or wherever, where literally they don't want anyone to pass, right? So they put these up for miles And it does actually slow traffic because it gives a visual representation, which means you can't drive 60 miles an hour. Like you use the example, people are going to drive the speed that they feel comfortable in those areas. So I think signage is absolutely important. Reevaluating where we have our signs. I also think that I've been noticing as we try to encompass all of these areas, we're also just putting up a lot of signs. And I remember when I used to run the movie theater, I don't care how many signs you put up. It comes to a point where it's like, there are too many signs and you don't know where to look. And I see that coming into Manchester now, coming down from 7 towards Lewisham. It's like sign after sign after sign. Okay, what am I preparing myself? We can find the most efficient ways to start adding to all of these. I also think we have BCRC who, as part of the pedestrian safety through that area, that's also a piece of the puzzle because I think there was some traffic calming areas in that as well.
There's also, I think if we're trying to make a change, we have to let them know why.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just going to come out and say that I don't actually think lowering the speed limit below 25.
No, I don't
is going to
think so either.
affect anything.
I don't think so either.
And because it does get to a point where I don't want to call it ridiculous, but it literally, it's no one's going to drive it. And we're actually going to see that the 80% of the people are driving over the speed limit, right? What we have to do is find ways to make it feel like they have to drive slower. And I think if we find a couple of those ways and include some sort of signage, yes, I talked about more signs, and make it known whether we have it on our books already or it's something that the state is doing about Jake Brooks.
There's no sign actually from the Button roundabout when you're going north towards Dorset that says 25 miles an hour. There's a big telephone pole there and
It was right on that first.
That's right.
there's a crosswalk sign. Well,
Going
whenever this was
out.
taken,
Yeah.
this is going towards Dorset.
Going out, but it doesn't come.
There's
into
no-
the bank.
There's a no 25 mile an hour sign as you turn onto 30 North from the Button roundabout in front of the Bonnet Main or whatever it's called today.
Well, I think repositioning some of the,
There is a Route 30 sign, so they may be confused between
oh, maybe,
the speed limit of 530, but there's not
maybe.
need to put a 25 mile an hour sign there.
You can
just
you can have paintings on the road, you can have 25 written on the road. There's a bunch of things. And I think incrementally we can add these to try to tie them back with advice from someone that I think we need to reevaluate this. I think cutting the 10 and below off so that we're not, skewing the numbers. Yes, there are absolutely cars that are driving by in certain times. There's probably more that are speeding. It's clear we have some speeders, but we have to find the most common sense ways that are economical and efficient to start moving the needle. Lowering the speed limit's we can't do it over Morrisville Road because we have no control over that.
Do we know how many trucks go back and forth?
We don't, but the thing is, Lynn, is that this is non-discriminatory. I mean, it doesn't matter, honestly. It could be, you could have a car with bad muffler that is louder than most trucks, right? But this is not going to tell anything about the Jake breaking this, right? And we're not going to know what that counts.
I would say we're not oversigned going north or going towards Dorset on Bonnet.
I think the position of the signs.
There's one at the bank sort of in and it's not very effective. I would say that we're oversigned.
No, I'm not saying there.
No, but I get, there's room for more sign.
Okay.
Well, you
Just-
might change the wording of some of the signage
Well, I think,
and position of it.
I like calling attention to the fact that it's a residential area. That's something I don't think we've said.
yeah,
I don't know.
The only problem is it's not just a residential area.
it's a
No,
mixed
but you
use
can
area.
add it. I mean, it just, to me, that
I mean, it's technically, you could say it's a school zone too.
school zone.
And if you really want to do it,
This says July of 23
you
and
could.
there's no speed limit sign going towards Dorset at the Button roundabout as you cross over the crosswalks. So there's an opportunity to let them know what the speed limit is along that corridor, number one. I think your idea of the those gizmos in the middle of the road would be good.
I mean,
Other ways are painted lines that narrow.
We just have to take them out in the winter, right? I mean, like.
Well, part of
for
it,
plowing.
that's, yeah, that's a part of
Remove them.
the speed bumps,
So
the.
that's only
DPW doesn't
affects
like speed
during-
bumps.
Speed bumps are a real winter maintenance issue when you wind up with ice and other sorts of hazards
And
because you
plow
can't
issues.
get it clear.
Yeah.
well, sorry. I know, I heard you breathe. I knew you were getting ready to say, I think, you know, one of the discussions that was about to come up with BCRC specifically was the crosswalk going into MEMS and going into that. I actually think that, you know, if we want to find, and there's already sort of visual narrowing there in that one crosswalk that goes to School Street, right?
Yeah.
Right? If that can be expanded, maybe that's part of the discussion, how we can look at maybe making that, because that's going to stop or slow some of the traffic because it already is there. It is important because that's where school kids are traveling.
Oddly enough, when we were talking about Depot Street, which when the state put that road in,
Yeah.
they built it for us, 3-lane highway, gave it to the town, said, okay, we're done. You got a great road. Well, it wasn't a great road because it was a 3-lane highway and people drove incredibly fast through there. So a few years ago, we did a study and we made a little, you know, a curb here. We took away some of the turning lanes and highway department was opposed to putting actual curbing in the middle of the road because they want to be able to plow it, but we painted in these barriers. And one of the suggestions was one of the greatest traffic calming measures that you can put in to get that visual narrowing you're talking about is roadside parking. That is actually very effective for slowing down traffic. Of course, we have that there. There are measures.
Absolutely.
You can take.
So let me talk to the experts, and I mean, everybody had wonderful ideas, but let me grab the experts' advice and come back with some ideas for you, okay? And I think with Jeff Williams' input and BCRC's experience and expertise and some of these suggestions here, yes, BJ, of course. We'll get something done that'll be effective up there.
I think in the interim, while we're talking about it some more, we can put up a sign that says 25 miles an hour at the.
We'll get some signage, we'll get some stuff out there right away.
That's great.
Easy fix we can do. So I'll get on that.
Start the process.
Bill, you would say something.
The process has started a while ago. So
Couple of comments about some of the things that are off. Putting anything.
You have to talk up there, really. Speak up, people. Well,
here, talk there.
Need that. Putting anything in the center of the highway that was discussed, I don't think is gonna work. Only partially because I'm sure Jeff Williams will have an issue about snow plowing, but you got too many curb cuts coming in and out of their driveways. And they're gonna be playing, you know, bumper cars or bumper posts or something to get around those things. But I think the one item that would work is when you talk about a speed bump, but what I've seen in a lot of different areas is a raised crosswalk. Okay, that's visible, forces you to slow down, but it's not really, it doesn't have it has the effect of a speed bump, but doesn't feel like one.
Table is the term.
And you put your crosswalk in the middle of it in School Street, that's a perfect location. So I think, try that. That's one thing I would target on, but let's see what the experts say. And by the time they're coming down to the roundabout, they're generally slowing down anyways. By coming in and out of Charlie's issue, everything is slowing down at that point unless there's no traffic. On the car, as you're coming out of the driveway on the left looking north, that is an issue if somebody's parked there. But you nose out a little bit. All the times I've been in and out of there, it's a nuisance. If we lost one parking space.
get to ours.
There's no buffer that you're, so that's part of the problem.
Yeah, that's the.
You don't, only place.
I think Scott has laid out a good plan for what we're gonna do. I need to move it forward because we have other agenda items. But we will get the great minds together and come up with some ideas that hopefully will be helpful, not just in this location, but other locations where we're having complaints. And
Thank you. Thank you. But what's the timetable? I keep coming and we never get to the basics of the issue.
It's moved up to the forefront now. Last time you were here, moved up to the forefront. We will be dealing, we did as soon as we can. The data, which we do have now, we were waiting to get this. That's helpful in trying to see what's going on there. And that'll be helpful to experts in analyzing it and seeing what they think might be the calming influence. But there's very little more we're going to resolve here this evening. But for the timetable, it's on the list. And that's.
I always come away on the list.
Well, we've done things. We've done, I mean, this.
I appreciate it being put on the agenda. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we have, at this point, I'm going to open the public hearing for the V-Trans bicycle and pedestrian scoping study. This is a joint study that's being done with the town and the village. Do we have a presentation on this?
Yes, we do. Eric is coming online. Eric Ailing from Stantec Consulting. If you remember, this is number 2 of 2. So we had one previously, and this is as we're getting closer to the finish line on the scoping study between the village and the town. There's been a lot of meetings, a lot of online meetings, and Eric is going to fill us in on where we're at and make a presentation right now. Just quickly, briefly, before Eric jumps on here, it was a $60,000 grant, $60,000 project with a $12,000 match, which is split between the village and the town, and a $48,000 grant. And the town added a bit on at the end to include School Street as part of the study. So Eric, are you there?
I am.
All right, take it away.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, well, thanks for the intro. We'll jump right into it. Agenda of what we'll cover tonight, we're going to quickly look at the project development process. We'll review some of the existing conditions, show the alternatives, and the main reason we're here is to get feedback on the alternatives and hear public comments. So as you'll see in a couple of slides, we've got the whole length broken down into 4 segments. At the end of each segment, I'll leave some time for questions and comments. And at the end of the presentation, we'll talk about what comes next. This is how projects typically go. You start in project definition, which is where we are, where an issue or a problem is identified, and it's researched through a scoping study. If at the end of that process, you end up with some alternatives that are supported by both the community and the local governments, those projects can become eligible for funding. And there's a couple of sources that are typically used for bike ped projects. Once projects secure funding, they can get the money for engineering and construction. This is just a quick look at where we started and where we are. Got going in October. We had our local concerns meeting at the same forum in November. We took the feedback from there and developed some alternatives. We've been working on those through the winter and into the spring. And we have analyzed them and to a small degree so far, and we have more analyzing to do, but we're here tonight for the alternative presentation. And the final report will come next after tonight. So our study area, Scott mentioned, starts at Union Street, carries up Main Street, and then includes also Bonnet Street and School Street. The segments are broken down as segment 1 is Union to Ways, segment 2 is Ways to Bonnet, segment 3 is Bonnet, and segment 4 is School Street. So just to show that we're not operating in a vacuum here, you know, we did look into the town and village plans, and there are a lot of listed desires to add bike and pedestrian infrastructure, both in the town and village plans. There's also the Manchester Downtown Plan, which has a really ambitious concept of what to do with Memorial Ave and School Street. What we study for this is at a much less level. It's not quite as ambitious, but it does help feed into some of those circulation concerns that were brought up in that downtown plan. And then, of course, there's the Riverwalk, which is right across from where one of our segments is, and it'll be a great opportunity to add connectivity between bike infrastructure and that Riverwalk. So after that meeting and using those town plans and village plans, we developed the purpose and need, which is how we analyze the alternatives. So the purpose is to construct improvements to increase safety and mobility of both drivers and cyclists along our corridor. In terms of needs, there's a need for adequate space for cyclists. Right now, Main Street is too narrow to support bike infrastructure, as are the sidewalks. There's just not enough width there to support cyclists. There's a need to provide bicycle connectivity, which means, you know, connecting all these things, the path behind the school, the Riverwalk. And as you start to get these segments built, it becomes sort of a multiplying factor, and then you get this momentum, and ultimately you end up with that connectivity that the town's looking for. There's a need to reallocate roadway space and give opportunities for other modes of transportation besides just cars. And there's also a need to address the existing congestion, and having that safe space that's comfortable for cyclists may encourage people to bike more than use their car. So we'll start talking about segment one, which I mentioned was Union to Ways, and we'll look at some of the existing conditions. This is the village, and there's resorts, lodging, recreation, dining, retail destinations. There's this beautiful marble sidewalk on both sides of the road for the first part of the project area from the south, and then it carries on for almost the whole rest of the way of segment one on the east side. Speed limit's 30. There's about 8,600 vehicles per day that travel through. 66-foot width right-of-way, and there are aerial utilities along the west side. You can see one of the poles right here. And with that, we will jump into the alternatives. So alternative one for segment one is a shared use path on the east side of Main Street, and I will make this bigger. Okay, starting out at Union Street, this would be a 10-foot shared use path. Would avoid the existing monument here before becoming the sort of typical section of a 10-foot shared use path with a 5-foot grass strip separating it from the roadway. Carries around the corner, crosses some drives. Go on to the next sheet. Continuing along, you can see there's plenty of space for it along here. There's not much in the way of existing sort of grading issues. It fits in really nicely along here, and then it ends at the existing crosswalk at the village shops. Alternative two is similar, but the path is on the other side of the road. And again, starting at Union Street, crosses West Road. There's a restaurant here, and it's a little bit tight, so the path would have to get pushed towards the road for a small section and then narrowed a little bit to 8 feet. And then it goes back to the typical of a 10-foot shared use path with a 5-foot grass strip between the path and the road. There is an existing culvert here that would likely need to get extended a little bit. Not a huge concern in design or construction, but just something to note. And then on to sheet two. Again, it fits in very nicely through here. And ends at the same place, same crosswalk, just other side of the road. So looking at the two side by side, you can see their construction costs are similar. The total project costs include engineering, construction inspection. Am I hearing something?
No, that was just something here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I heard somebody saying my name. I apologize. As I was saying, the total construction or total project costs include engineering, municipal project management, and construction inspection. So both do meet the purpose and need completely. In terms of impacts, they're both improvements for cyclists, safety. For right-of-way impacts, we anticipate for this segment just temporary easements only. So when the contractor goes out there to build, he might have to push past the right-of-way to tie in the slopes, but the path itself would be in village or town right-of-way. Not anticipating any significant environmental impacts. In terms of cultural resources, there's not enough space to keep both the marble sidewalk and have a path and have everything be within right-of-way. So it's important to note that if alternative 1 is selected, and that's the east side, most of that marble sidewalk would get lost. All that would be left would be the very southern end of the project along the west side. If alternative 2 is selected, then that sidewalk gets lost at the beginning, but it's maintained on the east side the whole rest of the way through the segment. Both have the 5-foot grass strip, so there's enough space for snow storage, so it's less concerns for winter maintenance. There are no utility impacts anticipated with alternative 1, but alternative 2, probably the utility poles would need to move, and they are aerial as you leave the village. And no stormwater changes because the curb line is not changing on Main Street. However, there's going to be enough new impervious surface, enough new pavement that the state would require a stormwater treatment permit and then some stormwater treatment practices. And those can be done either small per segment or larger to cover everything, but that's something that would be looked at more closely during detailed design.
Eric?
And so that's it for segment 1. And I put a couple of bullet points there to help guide the discussion, but really I'd love to hear any feedback or questions or comments about segment 1, either of the alternatives, and I'm happy to pull them back up.
Heidi, go ahead.
Could we, if we have to move the power or utility lines, could we bury the lines if we're doing construction there anyway?
Yes, that is a possibility. However, the state won't pay for it, so that would be something the village and town would need to work out. It is quite expensive, and that's just not considered a cost that VTrans will cover.
In driving to that area during the last few weeks and knowing this was coming up, and I don't see, did you ever look at the alternative of just adding a shoulder on each lane of the highway and just pushing the curve back towards the sidewalk and making those bike lanes?
We did talk about that in our project team. The issue with that is there's not really a cost savings. Moving curb is really expensive. And then stormwater has to change also where there is curbing. And then the other thing is it doesn't fully meet our purpose and need, which is to provide safe access for users of all ages and abilities. So bike lanes are great for a lot of cyclists, but for sort of the younger ones or maybe the more vulnerable, they're not going to feel comfortable. So that solution would be great for just cyclists who are comfortable being in traffic, but it doesn't meet the needs of everybody we're trying to design for.
Okay, but then when you're talking about creating these new areas, and you say they're joint use, are they cyclists and pedestrians?
Yes, they're 10 feet wide, which gives enough space for bikes or pedestrians going in either direction.
But bikes, that means pedestrians though, and bikes can be traveling in the same direction, and that's what we're discouraging on sidewalks these days.
Right.
So I'm a little confused by that.
Yeah, it's just the width is the difference. So with a sidewalk, it's only 5 feet wide. That's just not wide enough to pass two cyclists, to have two cyclists pass each other in opposite directions. But with 10 feet, there is enough space, and there's a little shoulder on the edge too to provide more. So think of it like the Burlington bike path or, some of the other trails and paths that are 10 feet wide. They're designed wide enough for, all different modes of transportation to be used on them, non-motorized modes.
Anything else? I don't see any hands up.
Okay, move on to segment 2. That's Ways to Bonnet. Some more dining, retail, lodging in segment 2. This is where the roundabouts are and there are existing sidewalk on both sides of Main Street, but here it's concrete instead of marble. Speed limit is 30, about 11,100 vehicles per day travel through this segment. Right-of-way width is still 66 feet, and there are aerial utilities. Most are still along that western side, but there are a few on the eastern side as well. And with that, we'll jump into alternative 1, which is an east side path. This is essentially a continuation of alternative 1 from the first segment. It just carries that path further down. All right, picking up right where we left off. This first segment presents our first challenge. Geographically, there is a but there's a steep enough hill here where the path is likely not going to fit in without a retaining wall. So we're anticipating the need for a small retaining wall along this section, just to make all the grades work out. And again, at this corner, there's another fairly tall but small hill that would need some retaining wall. But beyond the retaining walls, it would still be a 10-foot shared use path with a 5-foot grass strip. We wrap it down Equinox Terrace a little bit to get the crossing out of the roundabout for a little bit safer location. And then it continues along as a 10-foot path with a 5-foot grass strip until we get to Mountain View Terrace. And then there are a number of structures that are just too close to the road to have that 5-foot grass strip. So in this area, the path would get pushed towards Main Street and it'd be separated with just a curb instead of that 5-foot grass strip. There's, I think, 3 or 4 utility poles along here that would need to be relocated with this alternative. But again, most of them are on the other side. And the no grass strip continues all the way to the end where we get to the next roundabout. Cyclists would have to enter here with shared lane markings, but there is enough space to provide another length of path once you get past the roundabout. And that would take us to the end of segment 2 into Bonnet Street. As you can see here, when we get into alternative 2, there's just no space for the path. So this path option would have to be the alternative regardless of which side most of the rest of the path is on. And so alternative 2 similarly is an extension of the segment 1 alternative 2, and it has the path along the west side. Picking up at the village shops again, crossing Ways Lane twice, 5-foot grass strip along with a 10-foot shared use path, similar crossing to the first alternative we looked at. There are utility poles along this side for most of the area, so those would need to be relocated or buried. It gets a little more interesting here after Hillvale Drive, as probably a lot of people in the room know. These buildings are set up higher than the road, so there's quite a hill here. So we would need additional retaining wall, a little bit more significant than what I mentioned on on alternative 1. And then it would carry along and end at the roundabout. And at that point, there would have to be shared use markings. There's just no space to put a path, as I mentioned on that last slide. So it could still be that same path shown from alternative 1. It could be part of our alternative 2 as well. Comparing them, you can see the prices have gone up despite the length being quite a bit less than segment 1, and that's because of those retaining walls. Those get expensive in a hurry. So the construction costs between the 2 alternatives are similar, but there's a little bit more substantial retaining wall needed to put the path on that west side of Main Street. They both fully meet the purpose and need. In terms of impacts, they both provide significant improvement for cyclist safety. For right-of-way, there will still be those same construction temporary easements needed, but it's likely that at the intersections with the side roads, there would be some permanent impacts as well, because the side road right-of-way is not as wide as the main road right-of-way. So there would probably be temporary and permanent easements required for segment 2 for either of the alternatives. Again, not anticipating any cultural resources. Adequate snow storage for both, although that the end of of alternative one has that area where there's no space for a grass strip. So that would present a challenge that's not insurmountable, but something for the snow crews to deal with in the winter. For utilities and drainage, it's just those utility poles that I mentioned when I went over both alternatives, and no change to existing stormwater infrastructure. And I am ready for questions on segment 2.
That didn't include the development that's going, the brew pub. Would that affect, on the west side? Do you think that would, affect that alternative?
It shouldn't, since we're staying within the right of way. We did mention that when we did our site visit back in October. So we're aware of it. It just may mean that, if there's going to be a path on that side, the town should be careful with how they, if there's going to be driveway changes, just make sure that it's going to incorporate the potential future path going through. But there shouldn't be any other issues beyond access management, which is something that's usually dealt with in detailed design. You look at those driveway widths and make sure they're not overly wide so that you're creating too many conflict points for cyclists.
There's been significant construction there since October, and most of that construction took place in the winter, and it's pretty close to the.
It's very close, and I was actually thinking that where the exit is going towards Hampton Inn, I believe that there's actually the grade is slower than the road. So there's actually kind of a drop off right there, if I remember correctly. I was making this comment, if I remember right, before.
Pretty substantial.
There was, before the High Ridge Plaza, all the High Ridge buildings were redone, there was actually a very substantial retaining wall there.
Yes.
So it's like returning back to 40 years ago, 30 years ago. That seems really tight now that I think about
A
it.
new restaurant across from Stewart's too is very close to the road. Well, it's good because they had a lot of parking spots for bikes.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Hi,
14 bikes.
Miss Corbett. I'm always on my bike in town, so I'm thrilled to see this up here. And I think kudos to everybody for trying to drive this forward. And my kids are on bikes. One of the things I think we should be considering, I'd hate to see the bike path change sides of the road. I think if you commit to a plan, it should be on the same side of the road all the way along Main Street and into the roundabouts. I'm nervous about the breaks in between the roads and where cyclists cross safely, because as was rightly pointed out, it's meant to be multi-purpose or multi-use for a wide range of ages. And young kiddos are going to have a hard time navigating the breaks in the roads, and especially the roundabouts. And we're on our bikes daily trying to navigate the roundabouts, and it's chaotic. So there's no magic solution, but as long as more thought is put into the junctions for increased safety, I think is incredibly important. And that's my initial comments, but I'm sure I'll have more.
Great, thank you.
I think no matter which option you go with, there's going to be some pushback about changing the character of the street. Doing away with marble sidewalks in the village, I don't know how that's going to fly down there. But there's been significant construction on both sides of the road, near the Hampton Inn and the Shaw's roundabout. It still would appear to me that probably the east side is the more logical.
Option one, you mean?
Option one.
I mean, especially that intersection, West Road, BBA, and like the Silver Fork.
Yes,
You
that's
can't
horrible.
have a path
was-
side. That intersection is
Yes.
tricky for
Yes.
you, the best driver in the world. And it's,
Completely
if you
agree.
put a bike and pedestrian into that, forget it.
Yes.
Any other comments on, what would we call this?
Segment 2.
Section 2.
Section 2. Okay.
All right, moving on to Bonnet Street. That was an interesting discussion I got to hear earlier. So we weren't looking at traffic calming necessarily. However, I can offer that we can certainly add the section to the report and make some recommendations. That wouldn't be far enough out of scope that it could be added, but I'll go through what we have and maybe some of that can come up in the discussion of segment 3. So retail, dining, and of course the residential housing in segment 3. There's on-street parking on both sides of the road. The speed limit is actually 25. 6,193 vehicles per day. It's a little bit narrower right of way here. It's only 49.5 or 3 rods compared to Main Street, which was 4 rods. And the utilities are along the eastern side of the road. So we looked at 2 options. One is an on-street shared use path. And that would start at the existing crosswalk, which would feed in nicely to the one length of path we showed along here. Possible right-of-way impacts here at the corner, but other than that, the path would stay within the town's right-of-way. Now, there's no room for a grass strip here, so this would just be curb between the path and the roadway, which is the same as it is right now for the sidewalk that's there. The issue here, though, is to create the space for this and for the next alternative, we would have to remove parking from one side of the road. That's about 15 or 16 spaces. And that would allow enough space to sort of keep that back edge of sidewalk where it is and bring the path out so as not to impact beyond where the sidewalk ends today. And it would carry up to School Street. Alternative 2 is a reallocation of the existing pavement space with bike lanes. And again, this would be accomplished by eliminating parking on the east side, and that would allow the center line to get shifted over. And that would leave enough space to have 2 5-foot bike lanes with a 2-foot painted buffer for a total of 7 feet of separation, or 7 feet of available space for cyclists. And there'd be 1 bike lane going in each direction. And that would continue along to School Street again. And looking at these alternatives side by side, obviously building a path is far more expensive than just repainting the road. So that's what the cost difference is. In terms of meeting the purpose and need, having those on-road facilities would not meet part of the purpose and need, which again is to allow it to be used by all ages and abilities. It's just the more comfortable cyclist that would be using a facility like that on a road as busy as Bonnet Street. It still does give us a comfortable connection to some of those cyclists, so it does partially meet the purpose and need, but only alternative 1 fully meets it. In terms of safety, there is an improvement for both, on both alternatives for cyclists. There are temporary and permanent right-of-way impacts likely associated with alternative 1, which I mentioned. Nothing, of course, with alternative 2. Not anticipating any environmental or cultural resources impacts. So there is still that same maintenance issue when you don't have the grass strip, but that mirrors what's there today with the sidewalk. So it's something the towns has a method of taking care of in terms of snow removal. For utilities and drainage, those utility poles are along the east side, so those would need to be relocated. And there is existing in-ground stormwater, which when you pull the curb out will have to be adjusted as well. So that existing stormwater system would need to be modified. Ready for questions on Bonnet Street?
Bill,
On alternative two, you losing parking on both sides?
No, just one side.
Just one side.
Yep. Yeah, just the east side on both alternatives.
Okay. I couldn't tell when you moved it over.
Yeah, it's hard to tell with the ortho photo under, but the parking would, you can see how it's much wider on this side than what we're showing here. And that's just the amount of space we have between the curbs.
Would they consider to include School Street and connect to the public school and connect to the rail trail?
Yes, that is segment 4, which we are almost
So you're
to.
coming.
Yes.
I think it's exciting for you.
any more questions? Comments? Okay, segment 4.
All right. All right, so as mentioned, segment 4 is School Street. This is just the residences along School Street and the elementary school. And we're looking for access to the newer path, which you can just see right here. There's a better look at it in this image. 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. It's a low volume road. I was not able to find traffic data for School Street. Right-of-way width is 49.5 feet. And there are utilities you can see here along the northern side. So we have two sort of low impact alternatives that we're going to show. And the first one is advisory shoulders. And I will show you what these are before we get too deep into this alternative. Let me just pull this image up. So an advisory shoulder is something that can be used on a low volume road where there's not enough width to put in 2 bike lanes and have 2 vehicle lanes. So what ends up happening is you have a narrower than needed for 2 vehicles center lane, and the vehicles will travel in the center lane. And when they come up to each other, they encroach into the advisory shoulder when it's safe to do so, i.e. there's no cyclist there. And these can be really effective at adding that extra space for cyclists when there's just not enough room to fit everybody on the road and the volume is low enough. So what that looks like on School Street is pretty simply just these dashed lines. You've got this 14-foot center lane. Sorry, I believe it's a 12-foot center lane. No, I'm sorry, I was right. 14-foot center lane. That would be shared by cars, and then 4-foot bike lanes, one on either side. And that would continue up to the elementary school entrance. And then there'd be some sort of like a bike crosswalk marking to get people to the trailhead. And that's basically it. Again, it's low impact. And then alternative 2 would be to make School Street one way towards Bonnet.
Yeah.
On board.
Yeah, the other alternative is too complicated.
Yeah, they're starting to be used. Burlington has an advisory shoulder on Queen City Park Road. There's a few other areas in the state, but they're not that common yet. It's a fairly new recommendation from Federal Highway. So yeah, they can be a little tricky. But this is a even simpler solution, which is just have traffic going in one direction, and that gives plenty of space for a bike lane on either side. The volume is generally low enough where, you know, it should be okay circulation wise. We talked about this in our team meetings, but this would be another alternative, and it would just be paint and some signs, and then the same type of bike crosswalk to access the trailhead. Mm-hmm. And both alternatives do not touch Memorial Ave. That was outside of our area that we looked at. But of course, both are addressed in that downtown plan with a pretty significant makeover if that ever happens.
Can I make a comment about the traffic volume on School Street? It is low, but you be there at 8 a.m. and you be there at 2 p.m. or whatever, 2:50, and it's not low volume. It's carnage.
Yeah, so low volume is defined as like average daily traffic. Of course,
Right.
there's some peaks, especially with something time sensitive like a school. So in that instance, the advisory shoulder may not be appropriate for here, but it's an alternative we explored just if we wanted to maintain two-way traffic on School Street. But that may be enough of a reason to, select alternative 2 as the preferred alternative. But that's a great point.
Bike path or no bike path, that road should be one way for safety.
Yeah.
It used to be.
It has been in the past, and
Should be. for
residents of School Street have always been very opposed to that being a one-way street. But that's a comment for another time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, one, I know that we're all clearly waiting on the direction of the school district also, but every day I drive past that road and I'm shocked at how poor the condition is of Memorial and School Street. There is a massive crack in the middle of where the buses are coming out, and it's not really amenable to buses going north on Bonnet, trying to turn in to School Street. You cannot maneuver the curb without having cars back up onto School Street to turn the corner. So finding a solution where we are guaranteeing the flow in this entire area in one direction. I fear for kids' safety every day I drive there, because there's absolutely no place for them to safely walk to that beautiful crosswalk that we have on Bonnet Street. So, I mean, I'm with Ruth as I drop my kids off, and I've got more coming on the way. Not more kids, more that are gonna go to men's. Sorry, I saw Martha drop. But exiting this area needs some attention, and if we can, I think you can help the flow. I mean, Eric, you mentioned, the scope of, some traffic calming. I think that there's also some traffic congestion issues, specifically around school time in and out, that is creating even more struggle in these areas that we could solve by doing some sort of one-way.
3-minute warning.
Eric, I think you probably have some costs.
I do. Yep. So these are relatively low cost just because it's, again, just paint and signs. I put these as, sort of yellow. Yes, they sort of meet the purpose and need, just, as it's a lower volume road, and granted during drop off and pickup times it may be busier. However, I suspect it's fairly slow moving. I think it would be a comfortable space for most users, given that it's not sort of a state route. Both contribute to the, bicycle network we're trying to achieve here. Both improve safety for cyclists, and there are, of course, no impacts to anything because we're not changing anything except pavement markings. And if there are any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise,
I'm going to have to, at this point, we're going to have to.
Okay, sure.
We're going to have to extend the meeting, and we're going to lose one of our members. But
okay,
that's unavoidable at this point.
I make a motion to extend the meeting.
Second. Moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're extending the meeting. Heidi, thank you.
Sorry, thanks.
And are there, Bill, questions?
Yeah, on Ways Lane down to the roundabout in the center of town, and maybe a little bit going out Bonnet Street too. When you got your 10-foot joint use lane next to your highway, and we have a lot of commercial egresses along those lanes. And so how does it work? I'm a little concerned. I mean, you got customers going, particularly when they're leaving a property, they stop. They're going to have to stop, I guess, to assess traffic on this joint use 10-foot strip. And then you're focusing on your highway traffic at the same time. I'm a little, just like to know how that works, and bicyclists are gonna tend to come down, use these lanes, and you know, they're gonna be acting like street traffic in both
Yeah.
directions.
Yeah, certainly, you know, in an area
Seems to
with.
me we have a lot of challenges for traffic coming in and out of these commercial properties.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. And I did mention access management, and that's something that during detail design, you can look at those drive entrances and exits, make sure they're not overly wide. You know, make sure they're properly signed and marked to make drivers aware that there is a path there. But yeah, I mean, frankly, the more driveways you have to cross, especially when you're talking about retail or commercial, it's an issue. And you know, it may be a matter of actually putting stop signs on the path at key areas so that cyclists understand that they're, you know, potentially entering a driveway that's very busy. But yeah, that is a concern, and it's something that can be dealt with in design through proper access management and making sure that there's not unnecessary drives or unnecessarily long drives to minimize those conflict points. But that is a great point, and it is
I've got a
something that's
logistical
definitely a
question.
concern.
When these paths intersect a side street, who has the right of way?
That can be that it can be either. You could put a stop sign on the approaching roadway, or you could put a stop sign on the path. Those are generally sort of context sensitive. So in certain areas where you've got a really low volume road, it might make sense to give the right of way to the cyclist and put a stop sign on the roadway, and then vice versa. If it's a, you know, maybe a busier area or a leg of a roundabout, you don't really want to have a stop sign entering a roundabout. So then you put the stop sign on the path. But that sort of goes into that access management I mentioned, and that's something during detail design. You look at all those conflict points and you come up with the best and safest solution that you can for each of those conflict points.
With this fee, this section to me seems the most, I don't say problematic, but it seems the most difficult to accomplish all of the goals effectively.
Absolutely.
With
I agree with that.
potentially the highest volume of users who may be in that uncomfortable to use bracket. And
yes,
my question, and this is somewhat rhetorical, would we ever consider, I mean, obviously we're talking about the town's right of way on all of these, right?
Yes.
I mean, could we see that there's the potential to backlot some of this somehow? Where, you know, I'm just thinking Langway. You know, if you were able to ride far enough behind that business so that you remove yourself from the congestion of this Button roundabout, all the utility poles, the stormwater. I mean, obviously there would need to be private consideration here, but if it came out and was head on for crossing Bonnet to go up School Street. So we wouldn't eliminate potentially some of the on-street parking. We wouldn't have all of these commercial, I think if it was all residential, it'd be one thing. Because I'm thinking Queen City Parkway in Burlington is primarily, if I remember right, it's primarily residential, correct?
I think the area they did the advisory lanes is more like commercial.
Okay.
But it is low volume.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to think of ways to potentially think outside the box on that one section.
And there's no version that goes in front of Langway on that side of the street.
No, there isn't, because he can't go around the bookstore. The porch of the bookstore is too close to get the 10 feet that's required. Because you can touch the porch of the bookstore.
But you could go back around the bookstore maybe, like to your point, and through.
Yeah, I mean,
and then
yeah,
back on the road.
Then you're into the acquisition of private.
Right.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right, no, it's no perfect solution. I'm just trying to see how to eliminate the squeeze. Yeah.
Yeah. Just one thing to add in, when it comes down to funding, the state wouldn't fund a project that was proposing to go through private property unless easements were already secured. So that's an effort the town could sort of take on if you could come up with another alignment that would, be amenable to property owners and could get easements, then there's a possibility. But the thing is, VTrans wants to fund these as transportation projects, and they would see a path, sort of meandering behind the buildings as more of a recreational trail. And those funding sources I mentioned, which are specifically the Bike Ped Grant and the Transportation Alternatives Grant, would not be generally available to that type of project. There are other funding sources available, sort of not as readily available as those two. But sure, it's, you're weighing that convenience for cyclists to get to some of these destinations with their safety. And from
Can I ask the question? Why is there not a version 2 that goes all the way up Main Street versus down Bonnet Street and then down Memorial to the school, to the bike path? There's that whole stretch.
Right on Main.
High Basil, underground, right?
Did look at that.
That would definitely eliminate
The
parking.
bank, you could eliminate, we've talked
Yeah.
about
Right. One side.
adjusting that parking
Yeah.
for a long time as a traffic calming scenario.
Yeah, we did look.
More
at that.
outside dining and different things, it could actually increase a little vibrancy where it's so narrow to begin with. Hopefully it would not increase speed. It would also connect to the bridge.
Yeah.
Right, it would stay on that side of the road, then cross at Cilantro, right? That's a horrible place, but there would be some, you'd have to do some traffic slowing in that aspect too. Seems like Bonnet Street's a little fraught with peril, my opinion. We need to work on the topics that came before us earlier. But it's a busy street. We've already heard that it's a super busy street. Potentially faster speeds than Main Street.
The next step here.
He's got it. Eric, you got the next steps for us?
I sure do. So we are going to meet as a project team. We're shooting for next week. So we will kind of go through all these comments, look at our alternatives, make some adjustments as necessary. We'll refine and we'll analyze them. The project committee will sort of pick the preferred alternatives, and then those will come back to the select board for endorsement, and that would happen likely next month. And in the meantime, if there are other concerns that people think of outside of this meeting and want to reach out, Mark Anders from the Regional Commission would be happy to take them, as would I. I think this meeting's recorded, so feel free to shoot me an email. I would love to hear more. But other than that, that is it for tonight.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Unless there are other comments, I'll close the public hearing at this point. Does that take an action of the board? Or can I
No.
close it? Yeah. Okay. And we'll go to the next agenda item, which is the town manager. Oh, this is town manger. Manger.
Manger, way in the manger. Happens a lot. I don't know why.
Well, spell check doesn't pick it up. 'Cause it's
Yeah, that's right. So the Bourne Brook Hazard Mitigation Grant has been submitted. We worked on that with the state and with their vendors quite a while, and with the property owners. we had to get it in by April 30th. We beat it by a couple hours. And the state has a review committee going on now, and they're reviewing all the applicants, all the projects, and they're gonna prioritize them and put a list together and put the monies associated with each project. And when they run out of money, that's the cutoff line.
Yeah.
So we're gonna see where we end up. We went on several ups and downs on that project. First, we were talked about as being like the lead project in the whole state. And then everybody else jumped in, and then they said, oh, there's problems with your project. And then we answered their questions about the problems that they brought up. And so now we're back on the good side, we think. We'll see how this review committee, apparently there's one or two people on this review committee that work for the state that if they don't like your project, it's not gonna happen. So I'll keep you updated as that goes along. Paving bids are out there right now. We're looking this year to pave New Ireland and Springway, and if we have enough left over, some part of Nottingham. This room, you might have heard the echoes a little bit. Doesn't seem to be too bad. I've gotten kind of used to it. But the work for the insulation has been done. They came in and put all the insulation up there. Those panels you see are all brand new. Those skylights have been pulled and then replaced with insulation and blocked back up. The louvers have been pulled and blocked again too. So this room will be a lot warmer going forward. Now that leads me to the next piece, which is we are gonna contract with GSK to put heat pumps in both this building and the emergency services building. And this is all through the MERP funding program. GSK can install both buildings. Here. For a total cost of about $142,000, which was actually way lower than the audit estimate. So we should still have plenty, well, I say plenty, but it goes quick. Money left from the MERP grant as we go along. So I just wanted to update you on that. So I know the Energy Committee has been supportive of all of these projects.
Would we be making changes to the existing heating plant? I know that
No, that'll be a backup.
I was gonna say,
Pumps are done.
augmenting too.
And this room itself would be included in this new list. So we get a heat pump. So now that we have insulation, we keep it warmer and then cooler in the summer.
I have a quick question on the Bournebrook. From ARPA, we allocated 160,000. Do you remember? 200. Okay, so if that falls apart, we
spent a teeny bit of it for this.
And we may be able to use that to do some kind of mitigation possibly, right? With that money, or do we?
Sure. I mean, this project's huge.
Yeah.
So, I mean, having 200,000, we could still do, minor things.
Okay. And then the other thing is if there's MERP money left over, maybe we can put in some soundproofing panels in here.
I think the next step is ADA bathrooms, how we're redoing the bathrooms in there. Yeah. So, and my final thing, I just want to mention that the police, we had a new police hire, I don't know, a few weeks ago.
April 28th.
Thank you. And what's Ron's last name? It's not Higgins.
Flynn.
Ron Flynn is his name. I always think of Ron Higgins for some reason, apparently. And so we're fully staffed, which is a very positive thing because I know a lot of towns have struggled with this. A lot of towns locally have struggled with this. And I think it's a good reflection on Chief Owens and his staff, his senior staff. The police and the police union seem to enjoy working here. And so it's nice to have a full staff and it'll help a lot during this upcoming summer season, especially with vacations and time off requests and things like that. That's it.
Other business.
Mr. Chairman, you have other business? Were you raising your hand? You can't.
You can't.
It's our time.
This is the select board. Public comments was the first thing.
Rats. Mr. Chairman, I want to report to the board on the activities of the North Shire Community Courthouse, or what's otherwise known as the Bennington County Courthouse. And Lori and I have gotten ourselves fully involved in this endeavor to the point where we are now both board members of a new organization called the North Shire Community Courthouse LLC. And it's a nonprofit organization whose status is currently pending. We're expecting, well, we don't know when that's going to happen based on what's going on with the IRS, but it has a board of directors, it has bylaws and articles of incorporation, and it can take in donations through the Preservation Trust of Vermont. They've secured accounting software, donor management software, a website, and a bank account. So they're going full steam ahead with the two phases. The first phase is the renovation of the building, and the second is the implementation of all the various programming that will be implemented there. Events and weddings and other and nonprofit organization use and all that kind of thing. So a lot happened between the last time I think they presented and right now. And interestingly, an opportunity arose for a $50,000 grant called the Bruin Grants that are administered by the National Park Service. And even though we're a fledgling organization and we don't even own the building or even have a lease with the building, this grant makes concessions for that and understands how to deal with that. And but one of the interesting things about this, it's a $50,000 grant, and we would raise money to do phase one, and we've identified the roof as being the main concern. And we would raise the money to repair the roof, and this grant would then reimburse the organization for that work. So we're looking, so that's number one. And because we identified that right away, the Preservation Trust of Vermont has encouraged us to go after this grant, despite the fact, as I said, that we're a fledgling organization. If we were to get that money, as I said, it would be a reimbursable amount. And the one good thing about this for the organization is that if we can say that there may be a grant pending, it makes it easier to raise that initial money when they know that their dollars will essentially be matched and the money will come back to the organization to do more things. Interestingly, though, with this grant that is done by the National Park Service, they require a term easement, and this apparently is very the common for work like this, for restoration of historic buildings. And with a $50,000 grant, the term easement would be for 5 years. Now, if you didn't get the money, or if the money was awarded and the present administration ripped it out of your clutches for whatever reason, then the term easement would go away. But the term easement is a requirement to ensure the protection of the public investment in the building. And as I say, it's fairly common. Now, the problem is that we're backed up against a little bit of a deadline. We don't need to sign a term easement right now, but if in these minutes, we could essentially say, yes, we're willing to go down that road, that would be enough. Now, before you frown, let me get through this part. That would be enough to get us in the door with the grant. We could entertain a motion and we could say something like, we approve the term easement, I would say pending our legal counsel review, and authorize the town manager to sign it in the case that works out. That would give us, all we need is to have that in the minutes to be able to submit this. grant application. And again, if we don't win it, or if it's not funded for some reason after winning it, we don't have to worry about it. It puts on, yeah, well, it basically is, it ensures the protection of public investment in the building. That's the way they say it. Whether or not it means we can't replace a light bulb, I don't know. I don't think it, if there was an emergency to fix it.
Same thing for their.
I'm sorry, what, Bill?
Arlington Commons.
They did the same thing. I don't think, from my understanding of this, and I'm getting up to speed as quickly as I can, as part of the development committee, I think that this is necessary no matter what's going to happen. I think we'll be up against this type of request in the preservation realm.
Take the money, you go belly up, and they were ready to come in and.
Yeah.
So we use the problem.
So the difficulty with it is that we'd be taking a fairly significant action without letting the public know that we were going to take an action on this. And the time frame that we're up against.
Well, June 1st, but really, I mean, it's, within this. Oh, Martha wants to come and talk about it because Martha is the development director of our organization.
I want to say thank you to the select board because you've given us two of your wonderfully qualified people that have spent time with us, and it's been really helpful. But I just wanted to say, just in response to the question of the easement, I know there's confusion about what it stands for and what it really is, but it boils down to, and I've been assured by the Preservation Trust of Vermont that, I'm going to quote it, owners are not obligated to do any more than what the historic district has required. That building is part of the historic district. And so what the obligation of the town is already there. There's no additional or new changes that have to take place. It's also dealing only with the exterior. It has to do with the, if you do a restoration or any kind of revitalization, you have to follow the guidelines of the standards, which are already put upon you because you own a building in the historic district. And I also have to say that I'm sorry about the confusion on the timing. I'm sorry we didn't give you more time to consider this. And the other thing is that if indeed you can, I would recommend, let me just go back to what I recommend. If indeed you can't do it tonight, maybe we could have a small group, with Scott and select board or whoever, and somebody from our organization, the North Shire Community Courthouse, and PTV, the Preservation Trust. We could get on the phone with Ben Doyle, who's the executive director, and you could ask your questions about the easement right away, and you would have that answer. So that might be an alternative, but this deadline is pretty short, and we really would like to apply for it. We think it's a win-win situation. We'd love to be able to ask for it.
My concern isn't with the lack of discussion relative to the need to accomplish this. It's in taking an action on something that wasn't on the agenda. And we try very diligently to make sure that people know if we're going to take an action on something. We put it on the agenda. That way, if somebody has some input, they can do it at that time and affect our vote. And if we take an action on something that was extra agenda, and people have concerns with it, we've already taken the action and not given our constituent an opportunity to have input into that discussion. That's my only concern with doing it this evening. It's not so much having a meeting with somebody to discuss the details. It's the parliamentary procedure of taking an action without having it on the agenda.
Your next meeting is on June 3rd, is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. Could we have the discussion outside so the questions could be asked of the Preservation Trust about the easement, if you have any, and then come back on that meeting looking for approval? It is after the deadline of the grant, But what I would do is, Preservation Trust is so enthusiastic about this project that I would ask for an extension. Maybe they would be able to give that to us.
I guess my biggest question would be, what are we giving away through this decision if we were to do it? I understand that, I mean, there's it's kind of an emergency situation in order to access grant money. And so I don't want to miss the deadline. I think that would put our ability to actually acquire the money at risk. And I guess I would just need somebody to explain to me this evening very quickly, what are we giving away and to whom are we giving it?
Okay. From my opinion, what I've heard from them is you're giving nothing away. What you're doing is just obligating yourself to the same thing that you're already obligated to by having that building in historic district. When the building became acquired by you, or was given to you, you had to take on that obligation, to keep that building in the same historic preservation mode or whatever. That there's a better word, but for that, it's the same thing. The standards are the Secretary of the Interior quality standards that are already there. So you're not giving up anything as far as I can understand.
We were to do as the owners currently, yeah, we would have to adhere to standards that this is telling us we would have to adhere to if it weren't already in a historic zone. I definitely am sorry that this came up in this fashion and we didn't have time to get this in front of the board sooner, but that is as it is. On the application, it said if the applicant organization, North Shire Community Courthouse, is not the owner of the building, then the application must be accompanied by a signed written statement or meeting minutes demonstrating that the owner, the town, will accept the term preservation easement. Applications without this statement will be considered incomplete and will not be considered for funding. So we might be able to get that extension. If we worded it, with legal review within the next, say, 8, 9, 10 days, it could work for us, but our attorney may say they weren't comfortable with it, or they would say they were. So I don't know that we're.
Not that I want to advocate for more meetings. Would this warrant a special meeting next Tuesday? This is the only item on the agenda. That was.
It's my call, but
I could be available for that too. Yeah. For a single.
To open it up to the public, to have enough time to get.
Yeah, I mean, does that give it enough time? I mean, it gives us enough time. I think.
That would be the 27th.
That's the day before
my personal deadline to get it done.
That's your deadline to get done.
That's okay. I'm
first, right?
Well, I think there's probably consensus on the board.
Yeah.
We're gonna go forward with this. To me, it's just I hate to do it without having it on the agenda. It's as simple as that. I mean, we could do a quick meeting and.
Wouldn't you like to at least look at the easement?
I think that would give us an opportunity to check out the details.
I'm not gonna be a naysayer, but I just saw this afternoon, several things jumped out to me immediately. Prior to any construction or alterations, we would need written approval from the grantees.
That's if you were awarded the grant, right?
Yeah, but we're signing the easement.
Right. But
right, that's true.
And we would adhere.
Just saying, it's not like
we would.
You do have to maintain it in historical manner right now. But we don't have to ask anybody permission to do things.
The way the Preservation Trust refers to it is it's a consulting role that they play. But I would feel more comfortable if you would bring your questions directly to, I mean, do it not necessarily at the board meeting, obviously, but to Ben Doyle or some representative of Preservation Trust that knows.
Meg Campbell available for that question?
Me?
Meg Campbell, is she one?
Meg Campbell could be one of them. Yep. Another one would be Christine Graham.
I've worked with Meg Campbell many times before.
May refer you to somebody else that knows.
Yeah.
Yeah, could give Meg a call, and she's been our ally for the whole time.
Yeah, she's very knowledgeable.
So
If you, I hate to, burden you with a call and all that, but if you could get that done before a special meeting next Tuesday,
Oh, yeah.
then you could be able to say to the board whether or not your fears are allayed. That'd be great. I'm all for a special meeting if we can fit it in.
Tuesday, the 27th at 7,
6?
6:30.
5:30. Earlier is worse.
Yeah, there's no way.
6:30.
When I go home from this meeting, I'm gonna eat lunch.
Yeah. Had breakfast. So, there we
and
are.
all this for nothing. Ain't nothing. I hate to have you do this, but
You do it today? Or is 7?
I can do 7 probably, unless it's a day like today. But I was very lucky. I almost called Scott and said I couldn't make it, say I couldn't.
All right, 7 it is. We'll stay
Okay.
consistent.
I'm sorry to do that to y'all, because I know it makes you either hang around or have to come back. I understand that.
Scott, maybe you can zoom in.
No, seriously, I can write in a show.
Maybe we can all zoom in.
It's fine. 7 o'clock.
One person has to be physically here.
And I could type notes or whatever.
That can be anybody.
Yeah.
Could be Katie. No, I'll be here. 7 o'clock. On a special meeting, we'll warn the special meeting.
Can you be the
One agenda item.
Yes.
So I'm gonna text Heidi.
And between now and then,
we got
or at least you and I back.
Yep, it's fine.
Heidi and I are the executive committee.
I'll send you the copy of this tomorrow.
Okay.
And I'll include Merrill in that too.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, so I don't know.
Okay.
Executive session.
would you like pizza?
I have pizza waiting at home.
No, I don't have to be for that.
Thank you,
Thanks, Mark.
Mr. Chairman, for entertaining this issue.
Is there any other business here at the table?
No, but there's a motion to adjourn.
Oh, we have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. We are adjourned. Our next meeting will be next week at 7 o'clock here. One agenda item only, and the meeting after that will be June
Maine.
3rd.
Just wanted to let you know that the Google Water Bridge is arriving in 2 pieces of sun.
Recording stopped.
And it's one place at 9 o'clock in the morning.